Greetings, hello, how are you? This is Coach Fleischer, and we are in Module 2, Session 1, and we're working on the virtual lab today. Specifically, the body part we're looking at is the chest, or more specifically, pectoralis major and minor, and the main movement patterns for that group. So here it is. You got the pectoralis major. It's a large kind of fan-shaped muscle, originates partially on the clavicle and the sternum, comes over and attaches to the humerus. And it's generally used in pushing type movements, more transverse plane. But if we go ahead and do a closed grip push-up, which I'm pretty sure you saw in the previous video, a closed grip push-up still asks the chest to do some work, but it actually quiets the call to bring those muscles in and lays the work more onto the triceps. But keep in mind, you can do more of a sagittal plane type movement pattern and still incorporate some chest. And I put this disclaimer in on the very front end because if you have somebody who comes into the gym and are telling you, on incline press they're working pec minor, they really don't know what they're talking about. Because pec minor sits underneath pec major. Here's the clavicle, here's the sternum, and pec major would overlay this, that big fan shape that you saw in the previous slide. And it actually attaches on the humerus out here, and it's what helps move or does move the humerus. Pec minor runs deep underneath pec major and attaches actually to the front part of the shoulder blade and the clavicle where they come together. So you look at this, it's used to articulate the clavicle more than anything. It doesn't even attach to the arm. It is not used in articulating the humerus at all. So pec minor is not something you're working when you hit a big old incline press. I did put a link into a video here for you. It's a YouTube video. It's a great 2.5-minute video, and it'll be a good overview regarding pec major versus pec minor and what they do, and hopefully it'll clarify a few things for you. But just realize that pec minor is really not involved with some of the stuff we're talking about today. So if we look at different exercises, you got press, 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 right? So it's part of the anterior chain group, different than the back muscles we talked about in the previous lab. And so these are antagonistic muscles compared to the back muscles we talked about prior. Barbell, dumbbell, push-ups, matrix, barbell incline, dumbbell incline, those are all press style movements, and those press style movements require the shoulder and the elbow to do some work, and you'll see this here in a little bit. But when we get into fly type movements, it's in general a single joint movement with other muscles being called into action to help stabilize the elbow during that fly action, okay? So most of your clients, when they come in, they'll present where they're actually going to be, in quotes, strong and short up front, and they're going to be long and weak on the back side of the body. And many times you'll find that you have to actually work on flexibility modalities on the front side of the body for your clients because they sit in that question mark position all day long, shuffling somebody else's paperwork. So here are the two biggies, right? The granddaddy, you got the barbell chest press and the dumbbell chest press. I'll let these guys play. But the biggie is you have 2 hands, 1 bar. You have 2 hands, 2 barbells. And when you look at these two in terms of degree of difficulty, this can be incredibly challenging if you put a ton of weight on it. This can also be challenging with a ton of weight, but this forces one side to work independent of the other. So there's a different balance component that goes into this versus this. And believe me, holding a 7-foot bar in your hands and doing a press, there's a different balance component that goes with this. So let me play these side by side so you can see. And you still have the same movement pattern. You still drop down. And if I can pull this guy back to about the bottom of that movement, you'll notice with this, I leave a little gap in between my chest and the bar, and that's done deliberately. I do that just to kind of save some wear and tear on my shoulders. But if you're actually coaching athletes, you have to have them do an absolute range of motion and touch their chest. But just notice, you're roughly coming about the same distance down. The elbow's breaking past where the shoulders are, and it's going to put you in a little bit past 90 degrees. My forearm in this position is perpendicular into the bar. I'm not a big W, nor am I pushing in. My force application is straight into the bar, straight to the ceiling. It's the same thing over here as well. Pushing those dumbbells straight up to the ceiling. Now if we go into an incline variation, all we're doing is changing our body's position relative to gravity. Same idea when you look at this. I drop down, elbows drop below the shoulders, and you're getting a little different range of motion on this in terms of the humerus allowing the elbow to drop down further than you saw in the previous example. but it's kind of quirky, right? Because it's relative to your thoracic area, to where the rib cage is. It's actually a different angle, so the off angle makes it look much deeper, but it's actually, if you look at it and compare chest press to the incline, it's not so different. But what I want to point out with each one of these is this: independent, one side or the other. This side, both hands are pushing into the bar together. My forearm is driving force straight into the bar. You can make a T out of my forearm and the bar. I'm not making a big W out of myself. Those are the big takeaways. Yeah. Get a little chest workout in. Moving on. So you can also use different pieces of equipment in the gym, right? This is a dual action pulley. Weight is being redirected. One weight stack is here, one weight stack is over here, to the pulley on the bottom, to the pulley on the other side. And now the resistance is being offered on a slight angle relative to what we saw before. So you know the barbell and the dumbbells are being pulled straight to the floor. The cable is actually at a slight angle, so my resistance is different. For each of these, I'm actually pushing up, and I'm being forced to push up and actually what's called adduction, squeeze the chest as I'm coming in. This is a very effective exercise for clients who get stuck on bench press and get stuck on incline, because you're not only pushing upwards, you're actually having them squeeze inward, and chest is used in adduction as well, chest muscle group. So you have a little bit of a combo platter here, and I often will throw this one in with clients who are kind of stuck. If we go ahead and switch this over to more of a fly progression, you go ahead and look at this, and like, you can't help but see, and we've talked about this before, I'm totally in transverse plane here. And what you'll find is when you look at these, right? I'm gonna go ahead and back this guy up and just pause it. When you look at each of these, you know, we talked about it's not really pec minor, but what you end up having is you have almost like these two heads, and you'll see this in another video I have posted for you guys to review. It's on Anatomy Zone. You have this clavicular head of the chest, and you have the sternocostal head of the chest. And the video really does a great job of outlining this. And so when you look at chest work, and I'm doing incline, well, you know, chest is chest is chest, it's still muscle in the chest, but as you go on an incline, you're targeting a slightly different area of the chest, more up in the clavicular head of the pectoralis, whereas when you're flat and doing a dumbbell flat bench, like over here, and your resistance is perpendicular to the floor, and your body is parallel to the floor versus an off angle here, this ends up being a little bit more sternocostal. And that video does a great job, the Anatomy Zone one, of really showing these two and giving you variations for these. Okay, let's move on. I'm getting tired of doing some chest. Now, just kind of like cool variations. And the one on the left you've already seen before. You have a press fly movement, long lever on the right side of my body, shorter lever on the left, single joint exercise over here with static contractions across the elbow to hold the elbow in place. Over here you have the elbow and the shoulder are both moving. And in that example, what you really have is you have a single joint on one side, multi-joint on the other. Okay, cool, got it. But you also have a little bit of, in terms of motor unit, to how much muscle you're recruiting, you have a variation between the two because you basically have asymmetrical resistance curves, right? That long lever, even though it's the same weight, makes that weight feel different than the one over on this side. I'm trying to push up against resistance, which wants to take the dumbbell straight to the floor. Over here, my forearm is driving straight into the dumbbell, as opposed to over here, my forearm's at an angle. So, you know, that causes unilaterality between the two, meaning one side is contracting differently than the other. So now if we go ahead and look at this over here, this is a dual action pulley and a dumbbell. This is another one when I have clients who get stuck on their bench press, I'll introduce this modality, because we know this resistance forces the user to come up and actually adduct and squeeze in, where the resistance actually drops off when you have the hand straight over top, because it's nothing more, your arm is nothing more than a column at that point. Down and up. And of course, on that exercise, you go ahead and switch partway through. You pass the dumbbell across the chest and you grab the handle on the other side. But what you'll find is the midsection also has to fire a ton to keep a person from falling off the bench. So keep in mind, you have different variations you can do, and you're not just stuck doing flat bench incline. These are real easy ones that you can throw in and quite frankly do on an incline bench. So what I like about this one particularly is that it brings in the midsection. I like this adduction work on one side, and notice the dumbbell is right over my elbow, which is right over my chest, which kind of quiets the chest. So when you get into different weights, and push bigger weights around, you get to 5s to 10s to 15s to 20s, the dumbbell heads on a weight rack change size, right? So when you get into the bigger weights, like I think it's the threshold is 25 and above in the gym, the head of the dumbbell gets bigger. As you get into heavier and heavier weights, it gets thicker and thicker, which changes the range of motion, however, slightly. So keep that in mind when you work chest. Bounce this guy out to the next one. Another combo platter I like is this. We have a modality switch. We're doing dumbbell chest press, but not on a bench that's nice and stable, but on a physio ball where I have to support, my shoulders are being supported by the physio ball. And the midsection has to fire. Now, if you really want to up the intensity, you would do physio ball, dumbbell, chest press, and do a press fly movement like you saw before, or you do a single foot on the ground at a time, which makes it incredibly challenging. But let's let this play out here. Pay attention to how the forearm is driving up into the dumbbell. And one of the big keys on this, just like you'd see with normal crunches on a physio ball, the hips, you have to actually guide your clients to squeeze the glutes to keep the hips up so they stay in this tabletop position. Ear, shoulder, hips, knees are all parallel to the floor. If they're not engaging their glutes, they'll actually, it's like the front car on a roller coaster, will just kind of roll down the ball. This, nice and parallel like a tabletop. Now this exercise over here, I'm showing it with both arms working at the same time with one foot forward versus the other. Variations you can do is you swap feet, right? You do half of your set with the right foot forward, half of your set with the left foot forward. Another variation is you do 1 foot forward and you only work one arm, so you really are forcing the body to work across transverse plane, and the midsection has to fire. But I'll let this play out. You'll note there is a little bit of forward lean on this, and the forward lean, and I can change the pulleys to adjust accordingly, but in this example, the pulleys are about shoulder height if I were standing, but I'm actually leaning forward just a smidge in a bent knee position, so I'm pushing slightly downhill, and I'm trying to run that cable just about perpendicular to my torso. So let's play both these again for you so you can compare them side by side. And for both of those, the midsection has to fire. The physio ball example, I have to keep my glutes tight, I have to keep my midsection nice and strong, otherwise I'm going to have trouble on that ball balancing. With the dual action pulley standing chest press on the right hand side of the screen, my abs have to stay tight so I don't arch. Okay, so with the different exercises that you're seeing on chest press, we talked a little bit about this. You saw a couple different modalities. Now you're seeing dual action pulley, dumbbells, barbells. You can also use a BOSU for some of these. The physio ball was introduced in as a way to use a different modality to increase the challenge on an exercise. And then there's little things like you can do in how you administer the exercise itself. Perhaps physio ball on 1 foot. You'll notice on one of the exercises, when we compare these two side by side, actually, you can see my feet are on the ground and my feet are up. That is another thing, right? For people who are shorter, they have to put their feet up so their back stays flat. For people who are taller, they can put their feet on the ground, not a problem. But there is a trade-off. Your feet are like outriggers here and allow you to stay in balance. Over here, you have to really fire the midsection to stay in balance. So there are trade-offs, right, to even putting your feet on the ground in two very similar looking exercises where you're laying flat and doing a pressing movement or a fly movement. So keep that in mind, right? Degrees of difficulty change between foot position even on a dumbbell bench press. So with that, guys, I hope all is well. Be on the lookout for more videos, and I'm signing off.